So this evening I want to talk a little bit about Lotus. That's not going to be that easy for me because I am by no means any kind of Lotus aficionado. But anyway, I'm going to go back in time a little bit to 1970. Colin Chapman was looking for a replacement for the Europa, which, as you recall, I believe used a floor plan from the Renault 16 and transmission. But any errors and omissions are accepted in this video. He gave a young Italian designer by the name of Giorgetto Giugiaro a telephone call. Giugiaro was quite famed for his angular designs at the time, notably the 1974 Volkswagen Golf, which I have a version of in my collection. However, what he did with the M50, as it was called, was quite remarkable. This car looked like an origami student's wet dream. It was absolutely stunning, with crisp creases and angles all over the car. This was a car that was going to take on the supercars of the day. Eventually, a production model emerged and was called Esprit. It debuted in 1976. It actually looked a little different from the prototype. It was powered by a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine, which was remarkable at the time because the lightweight materials used in the Esprit meant that this car could keep up with the supercars of the day. It was the fastest production 4-cylinder car in the world. The car underwent 6 evolutions during its production span, which ended almost 4 decades later in 2004. In order to cut costs, Chapman raided the parts bin of other manufacturers, lights notably, and the rear lights from the Esprit were taken straight from a Fiat X180. For the Series 2 car, he took them from Rover's SD1, so a bit closer to home. That car was mechanically little more than the Series 1, but what made the Series 2 notable was the addition of a turbocharged version towards the end of its life cycle. The turbo then became the mainstay of the Series 3, which looked very similar to the Series 2, but it had a host of body kit on it. That, like the Series 1, was made famous by James Bond, of course. James Bond, I'm surprised I haven't mentioned that so far. James Bond, of course, drove a Series 1 in The Spy Who Loved Me and Series 3 in For Your Eyes Only. I think he went skiing. Anyway, by the time the Series 3 was drawing to a close, it was the mid-1980s, and Lotus felt that the car needed a refresh rather than just having bits of plastic tacked onto it. So they called on British designer Peter Stevens this time to do just that. And he basically took the old Esprit and rounded off all the sharp edges. The big deal was using the engines from the Series 3 itself, namely the Type 912, which was a naturally aspirated 2-litre 4, but then the turbocharged Type 910 as well. They were carried straight over into this 4th generation car, which was not known as the Series 4. The project name for that car was X180. Strangely enough, the Series 4 came later. The Series 4 itself was basically a sort of further rounded off version of the X180. Finally, in 2002, the final updates, which again were primarily cosmetic, were added as well. And the engine, of course, that people were interested in was the turbocharged Type 910. But it was no slouch. It would race to 0 to 60 in something like 5.7 seconds. I'll put the exact number on the screen. The car debuted for the 1988 model year and continues to use the Citroën transaxle, which went way back. That transaxle was actually used on the Citroën SM back in the 70s. In 1989, Renault transaxle was used instead. The base 215 horsepower car was retained, but an S model, which was a little bit more luxurious, had a slightly more powerful 230 horsepower version of the same engine. And then the SE model had a 265 horsepower model. That was the one that you wanted. That was denoted as well by new door mirrors, which were taken from the Citroën CX. And apart from some specialist models like the X180R and things like that, the X180 continued until 1994 when the Series 4 debuted. I think I've not cobbled that particular line of history up too much, but what was interesting about Peter Stevens is that, you know, he designed some really interesting cars. He designed the McLaren F1, for instance, the MG X-Power SV, which was MG's crazy halo car, which was a rebodied Mangusta. And he went on to design the Rover 25 and the revised Rover 25 and 45 and 75 updates, along with the MG equivalent. That's probably one of my favorite aspects about the X180 itself. I think what he did to it was really tasteful. Of course, it became very famous in another movie when Richard Gere drove one like a cack-handed monkey in the movie Pretty Woman. A friend of mine, Ivan Katz, has a YouTube channel, Drivin Ivan, and I'm going to put a link to that below. But a couple of years ago, I spent some time with him and you know, got to ride in his cars. I'm going to be seeing him again in the not too distant future, where this time specifically for this channel, I will be hoping to drive some, but I will be interviewing him about his collection. He's got a collection which you could argue is pretty left field. One of the cars in his collection at the time was a 1988 Lotus Esprit Turbo of the X180 variety. This is just a short video that I shot again for Classic Retro Modern magazine, and so I took some interview notes about the car, and we went for a drive in it, and I just shot some footage. So that's what this video basically is. So I hope you enjoy it. Do please consider liking and subscribing as well, because that really helps the channel move along. I'm Darren Walker, and this is Auto Atlantica. Yeah, we're rolling.
Colin Chapman says simplify and add lightness. And that's what this is. You have a
that's exactly what it is.
You have a 2.2 liter four-cylinder that keeps pace with the 12-cylinder Ferrari of the day.
Wasn't this the fastest four-cylinder car in the world when it first came out?
What the heck?
I'm pretty sure it was.
And it keeps up with all the V8 supercars and even the V12s. You know, for
exactly,
for the late 80s.
This was a supercar.
0 to 60 in the 5s, 170 something miles an hour.
Okay, so I'm here with Ivan and his 1988 Lotus Esprit Turbo. Yeah, I think I lost some hair on that run. But Ivan, tell me about this car, how you came across it, why you invested in the Lotus. I know you've got a Europa as well, so I know you're a fan of the brand. But what was it that drew you to this particular car initially?
Well, I usually luck into cars, and that was the case with this one as well. I already had the Europa, so that's a bucket list car for me. I mean, who doesn't want an Esprit? Mid-engine, more refined than the Europa, of course. People say it's not refined. It is. I mean, come on. If you go into Europa and you step into this, wow, the difference is staggering.
Right.
Again, I got lucky. This one was on a weird snowy day in March in the DC area. You don't see that a lot. I do have a lot of friends that know I buy cars, and somebody spied this car for sale at a shop. not in good health, unfortunately, and needed to sell the car. His instructions at the shop were just get it running. Don't do anything else to it. And then he said, well, I want to sell the car. Couldn't really afford to fix it and was ill. Unfortunately, the gentleman died. And so we were negotiating. His daughter, you know, I said, come up with a fair price. I mentioned the price. I think the daughter mentioned the price. And the guy at the shop came, you know, got us in the middle. I agreed to meet her with the cash. She flew into town with the title, and that's it. I lucked into this Lotus Europa for a very, very, very reasonable price, let's say. But I was buying it, you know, I didn't get to drive it. I didn't know anything about it. Turns out it's a 42,000 mile original car with, still has the original window sticker, a lot of records, and a lot of history. So it's a really well kept and great driving Lotus Esprit Turbo.
And how long have you owned it, Ivan?
You gotta look at, like, whenever I post the videos is what I if you Google Drivin Ivan Lotus Europa, Lotus Esprit,
it'll be on there. Yeah,
that's about the time I bought it. I believe I've had this for at least 4 years. It's a true mid-engine exotic car.
Yeah,
and again, it's a dragon slayer in many respects because a 2.2 four-cylinder turbo keeps up with all of the Ferraris and Porsches of the day. And in terms of top speed and spec, you know, mid 5 seconds 0 to 60, and maybe, you know, close to 170 something, I think, for the top speed. So if you look at the numbers of exotics in the late 80s, that's fast.
Yeah.
And this car is fast.
Yeah.
Felt it, runs great, and you know, it's one of those cars you take to a car show and people just like, it's staggering how many people come up to you with this car and say, oh my God, that's my favorite car.
Yeah.
Maybe they saw it in a James Bond film. Maybe they saw it in Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
You know, but whatever it is.
I mean, this is the same colour as the one that Roger Moore had in For Your Eyes Only.
Is it?
Yeah. It is the same colour. I couldn't tell you what the colour is, but it is the same colour. It was an S3.
Still, you know,
This is the X180.
Yeah.
So what are your plans for the car then, Ivan?
Nothing. I don't do anything to the cars. If they break or something needs fixing,
You'll fix them. Yeah.
My friend actually went through this one. So another Lotus fan who helps me out and helps me maintain this one. And it's you know, everything it needs mechanically it gets, but it hasn't needed much. It's supposed to be lots of trouble, usually serious, but this has been a very good, reliable exotic. Man, I love it. I love it just the way it is. I wouldn't change a thing. I don't believe in polishing cars. I believe in driving cars.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
And I mean, like, you know, for instance, in this, I mean, the interior is actually really good. The on the whole. But
I'll tell you something about the interior. My friends, I have a friend who details cars really well for me. He detailed my Lancia Delta Integrale. I was putting it in an important show, and he said, all of my car guy friends, they all hate the wheel. I have the original wheel in the back,
Right.
and I use
Yeah, that
it
is
to
an
keep the trunk open. I use it to keep the engine bay open because I like this one. It's not only is it outrageously Lotus, as you can see, but it's Momo. So
Right,
you got a little Italian style there.
Yeah.
With your Lotus steering wheel, so I don't see how you could hate that steering wheel.
But you were saying earlier that you've got some original replacement pieces, like for the sun visors in the back,
Yeah, they're the
and so
Why
you know, it's
bother?
like it's like a slow rolling restoration,
Yeah, but
or a fast slow rolling
if it works,
restoration.
why fix it? So why put the new ones on?
Yeah,
When you got the old ones on?
that's what I like. This is a used. This is a used classic, guys, and that's what we like to see on this channel. So, and it's also what we like to see in the magazine.
As you see, I drive them like they're stolen.
Yes, yes. There'll be more about that later. Yeah, I think we've got enough there for what we need. Ivan, thanks very much for showing us around this beautiful car. And yeah, I'm gonna lose some more hair on the way back now.
That's right. It would be cool if we were able to pass this guy. Show you the passing power of a 1988 Lotus.
Yeah, I'm about to start praying, everybody.